Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss a very interesting article about how news outlets have been losing audiences, and yet their editors seem to be paying little attention to the lessons of their own publications. But what's interesting is the way it dovetails into what I've been saying for months now about how engagement needs to work for political groups and news groups alike. Essentially, some news outlets are victims of their own attempt to chase outrage views. And I have to confess, it's getting me to think about something I've not really considered before. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So, quick background before I get into this later bit of news, because I think it's fascinating. I've mentioned a few times on the channel, especially when covering how political groups need to use social media, there was a noticeable shift in viewing habits after last year's general election. YouTube told me this was across the board. It was independent, as well as the big news outlets, left wing, right wing, wherever. They were all seeing a drop in audiences, the big switch off. They put it down to lots of people getting burned out by both the election and then the riots, and significant numbers of people in the UK just actively avoiding news and particularly politics. Now, that is not to say there isn't still a huge audience out there, but the potential is not so great as it was. But then this article in The Guardian today. Now, I'm always hesitant to read the news on April the 1st, I think for obvious reasons, as well as I tend not to believe anything I read on social media. But this one was buried. It's actually really hard. I came across it randomly on my phone and while I was doing the Wordle and spelling bee. And then I couldn't find it again afterwards on my computer, so I had to send it from my phone via email. So it's buried, right? It's not an easy article to find. So I don't think it's an April Fool's. It talked about how the BBC have changed things to try and combat what they're calling news avoidance. It refers to someone who said used to listen to the news. They particularly refer to a person who said that part of their routine, they would listen to the news each morning, but now actively turn it off. Why? It's not burnout in this case as such, because it's depressing. And the article discusses this phenomenon in the same vein. A group of people who are actively avoiding the news because it's negatively impacting their mental health. Now, this is quite interesting, and I wonder if it has lessons for the rest of us. See, I said only yesterday that bad news sells better than good, unless it's really good news. And that is still true, by the way. I've not got that wrong. Social media is very like an echo chamber. My likes to dislikes ratios on videos is basically about 99%. If I say something controversial, and I mean controversial that splits my audience a bit, it sometimes drops to 97%. If I really shit the bed, it sometimes goes down to 95%, but that's very rare. But that is still overwhelmingly approving, suggesting that despite some of the comments, I don't think many people listen to me for punishment. A lot of people are naturally drawn to discussions which chime or complement their own thinking. It might differ to that thinking, but it would need to be complementary to it, not a discussion that challenges what people believe are fundamental realities. And if you look up political news and commentary on YouTube, by far and away the biggest views are for videos that are it's not exclusively the case, but mostly it's the case they're incredibly tribal and sort of really ramping up that them and us attitude, right? Now, could work for Labour, maybe present news, which in government they want to make positive anyway. See, you present the news negatively in opposition, but positively in government, don't you? Do Labour have a potential audience, these sort of ones who are actively avoiding the news, a potential audience to reach who want positive news? They want news that doesn't damage their mental health. Because, you look at this headline, just an example. Millions of Britons brace for across-the-board bill rises in awful April. That was today. And this is The Guardian. Oh, you should see what the Tory outlets are saying. But another headline could have been, millions of workers and pensioners prepare for above-inflation income rises this month, which is equally true. Now, I'm not suggesting news outlets should have gone with that second one either, although they shouldn't have gone with the first also. They're both incredibly biased, unbalanced views of what's going on. There are increases to bills. There are also increases to a lot of incomes as well. But my point is, given what the BBC has been discovering, and The Guardian seem to believe, because they've written an article about it, what is the lesson to be learned? There is a section of the public who are interested in the news, not so much politics, and they hate the constant barrage of negative news. They think it's bad for their mental health, so they are actively avoiding it. So ironically, some news outlets, of course, are set up for the outrage audience, right? But some news outlets are hurting their own viewing figures by deliberately reporting in an unnecessarily negative way, should we say. Now, obviously, if the news is bad, there's always bad news. There's not a lot of ways of sugarcoating it, is there? But often news outlets deliberately ignore the positive news. And I thought this was strategic, an unfortunate consequence of the way clicks are earned, because it's sort of how it works for my line of work. But have they been getting it wrong? Should some news outlets at least perhaps take a different approach to social media commentators? Should they make more of an effort in presenting positive news while still informing the public of the bad things happening? Not ignoring that, which they should know about. It's a really interesting idea I'd not really considered before, but it does fit the general approach. Like for me, and I've said this before, there's what I call engagement and message. The message is the important information I want people to take away, but it's not always going to attract viewers. So you focus on engagement most of the time. Then you weave your important information into your offering. Like this, for example, this video is going to be well at the bottom end of my viewing figures because it's a topic only of interest to a small section of my audience. But I think it may be useful to that small section, so I'll take the hit. Do mainstream news outlets have a parallel conundrum? That the bad news is often very important and people need to know about it, but people don't engage with wall-to-wall bad news, 100% bad news. It's too bitter a pill to swallow. So should news outlets draw their audience in with positive, at least helpful, even when it's bad news? Is it helpful news? Positive, helpful, engaging news. Weave the bad news into it as well. That is certainly the lesson I'm getting from this article. It would suggest there may be a fundamental difference between what works for commentators and what works for news outlets, who need way larger and more moderate audiences. Like the audience a news outlet needs is way bigger than the one I need. It has to have much broader appeal, yeah? And that makes sense. Most people who engage with mainstream news are generally not political. They don't like politics. And it occurs to me that maybe there's a lesson for politicians here as well, which I'd not really suggested before. Politicians absolutely need to be usefully active on social media. The message seems to be getting through a little bit. And not just, in Labour anyway, not just posting random photos of them door knocking or pointing at potholes. I mean active. That means lots of people are engaging in their activity. See, what most politicians do, you see most MPs, they post them on Twitter. It's either a retweet of what someone else has done, so someone else has done the work, or they're just chronicling what they're doing in their normal day. They're not creating content. They're not, and that's what they need to do. They need to create those messages for people. They need to have lots of people engaging in their content creation. Otherwise, it's not really useful activity at all. But what's better for them? The path of the commentator, where you expect a narrower range of views as exists in the general population, or to engage people who care enough to vote, they're voters, but they try to avoid politics between elections. And if it's the latter, they may need to consider the approach that this article highlights. Content which is good for people's mental health. Doesn't even always have to be news, but it does lend itself to maybe promoting the good news that the government you would think would want to get out to the public. Not with boring sound bites though. The stuff the Whip's office sends you, yeah, throw that away. Use your initiative, create content, turn it into an engaging message, something people want to listen to and watch. I think this is a very interesting additional perspective. It's not to say that what I've explained before is redundant. Like the principles are still the same. To succeed on social media at any level, you need to consistently provide the content which will engage your target audience. And if you want more views, you need that target audience to be larger. But you still have to, whether your audience is very large or small, you need to consistently provide what engages that audience every single time. And that means you need a really clear idea of what your target audience is. It can't just be, oh, everyone who lives in my constituency. No, it's too many different people, right? You can't satisfy them all. You have to have a clear idea of your target audience. My target audience are politically engaged people interested in British politics, mostly based in Britain. If a Labour MP or the party more generally wants to engage with members of the public normally put off by politics, the same principles for engagement apply, but the type of content does not. And whereas outrage or mockery news can appeal to the politically engaged, indeed it does, might be very different for the non-political audience. So Labour should probably add this article to their reading list on top of the rest I've given them that they're not listening to, as they work on a serious social media strategy. Or is there merit in doing both, like trying to have some platforms and channels to reach out to politically engaged voters and other ones where you're trying to get through to those who are turned off by the oppressive political news? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.